Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
We were discussing chapter 9 of Canto 1, the passing away of Bhishma Dev in the presence of Lord Krishna. And we have seen the first 24 verses. Okay, so this is the division. We saw that Yudhishthira Maharaj was morose because of this mass massacre that happened in the battle of Kurukshetra. So they all went, and many personalities tried to console him, but he was not consoled. Okay, so finally they decided to go to Bhishma Dev by the arrangement of the Lord, obviously. Okay, so the first 8 verses discussed about how the Pandavas and other great personalities arrived to meet Bhishma Dev, who was about to pass. Okay. Then from 9 to 11, how Bhishma Dev received everyone accordingly based on the time, place and circumstances. And from 12 to 29, Bhishma Dev is basically speaking to the Pandavas on various subject matters. From 12 to 17, he pacifies the Pandavas, and he says that even though the Lord has been their constant companion, okay, even though they are the sons of religion personified, Bhima is so chivalrous, Arjuna is so chivalrous, very strong, but still they suffered, and it can be attributed only to the inevitable Kala, only the time factor, which is ultimately under the control of the Supreme Lord. Okay, and his plans cannot be known, or his intentions cannot be known. Okay, it's not possible to know his intentions. And we saw that Srila Prabhupada explains in his purports that when the Supreme Lord wants to achieve something, he does it through his devotees. Okay, so he takes control of the devotees' lives, and that's how he works. From 18 to 24, we saw that Bhishma Dev speaks about the glories of Krishna, and he says that he is the absolute truth himself. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So even though he has come, he is playing different roles in relation to you, and in relation to, he comes as one of a human or one of the people in this human society, but he is the Supreme Lord himself. He is the original Narayana, and we saw all those verses. Okay. So today, from 25 to 29, these are the instructions. This is the basic purpose for which Yudhishthira Maharaj came to meet Bhishma Dev. So the instructions of what Bhishma spoke to Yudhishthira Maharaj, we'll see these are mentioned from this verse 25 to 29. And from 30 to 44 is Bhishma Deva's prayers and his passing. So 30 and 31 is Bhishma Deva looking at Sri Krishna and meditating upon him. And Bhishma's prayers starts from 32 to 42. So we'll try to cover as much as possible. Okay, text 25. Suta uvacha Yudhishthirastadakarnya shayanam sarapanjare apricchad vidhan dharman rishinam chanushrunvatam. Suta Goswami said, Maharaj Yudhishthir, after hearing Bhishma Dev speak in that appealing tone, asked him in the presence of all the great rishis about the essential principles of various religious duties. So in the previous verse, Bhishma Dev, he said that, may the Supreme Lord kindly await me at the moment when I quit this material body. Okay, so this is an indication that his passing is imminent, it's about to happen. So when Bhishma Dev spoke in that appealing tone, then Maharaj Yudhishthir, he wanted to ask about the essential principles of various religious duties. Okay, so he spoke on that. So in the purport, okay, just one more thing. From verses 25 to 29, okay, the purports are quite simple. Okay, so what I will give you is just a structure in which the purports are there, so that it's more clear for you. Okay, we might not be able to discuss all the points in details, because speaking about Varnashrama duties, it can go very deep, but we'll not be able to spend that much time here. Okay, so I'll just give you a structure so that you can follow how the verses and the purport are in line with each other, and then we move forward, okay, to Bhishma's prayers. So here in this purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that Lord Krishna inspired Maharaj Yudhishthira to ask Bhishma Dev in the presence of many great sages, which indicates that a devotee of the Lord like Bhishma Dev, although apparently living as a worldly man, is far superior to many great sages, even Vyasadeva. If you see in previous verses, in verse 5, 6, 7 and 8, we saw that many great sages have arrived at the imminent passing of Bhishma Dev. And this includes Narad Muni, Parvat Muni, and then we have Vyasadeva, and even Shukdev Goswami. Okay, so Shukdev Goswami is considered as the best of all sages. So even though he was there, still, this is very special that Krishna wanted Bhishma Dev to speak on religious duties to Maharaj Yudhishthira. Okay, because at this point, when Bhishma Dev is about to leave, you can understand that Krishna, he wanted to glorify his pure devotee. So even though so many other great personalities were also there, just to give an example that even though Bhishma Dev throughout his whole life was involved in worldly affairs, in this royal duties, but still, he is best amongst the sages. Okay. And one more point is that pure devotees are always sound in body and mind. So Bhishma Dev was certainly in pain. Okay, he had this boon or benediction from his father that he can die at his will. Okay, but that does not mean that he does not have to undergo pain. Okay, he did suffer. Okay, he did suffer because of the pain. So he was there. He was greatly aggrieved because of that state when he was in the arrow, this bed of arrows. Okay, but and at that particular point, Srila Prabhupada writes that one should not have asked him any question at that time when someone is in such pain. But Krishna, he wanted to show that even though bodily a pure devotee might be undergoing so much pain, but still by his body or by his mind, his consciousness is so clear that he can speak on this, on dharma, on different aspects of religious life, on spiritual enlightenment without any difficulty. Okay, and we have seen this, in the life of Srila Prabhupada. Even though he was in the last moments of his life, still he was translating, still he was giving purports to the 10th canto. Correct? Completely clear in his consciousness, completely clear in his mind. Even though he was just the skin was just covering the bones. It looked like that. Okay, no flesh. He was not eating for literally weeks and weeks together. But still, his consciousness was so clear. So pure devotees are on that level. Okay, and Krishna wanted to emphasize that even though these great sages are there, but Bhishma Dev is so exalted. Even though he has remained as a royal person living in palaces and other things, still his consciousness is so fixed in religious duties, in spiritual matters, that his body, even though it's undergoing so much pain, still he's clear, his conscience is very clear and he can speak on all these things. Okay. And then Srila Prabhupada says that this is all due to the arrangement of the great wheel carrier Sri Krishna. Okay. For establishing the glories of his devotee, the father likes to see the son become more famous than himself. So just like the devotees preach so that they can please Krishna, similarly Krishna also, in many instances we would see that he projects the glories of his devotees. Okay, so when we say we preach, okay, what we are basically trying to do is we are trying to make people understand and bring them to the point where they can understand the glories of Krishna, right? And have an attraction or cultivate affection for him, have attraction for him, develop love for him, like this. Okay, and Krishna does the same thing for his devotees. So in his pastimes, what Krishna does is he propagates or projects the glories of his devotees, and through that he gets pleasure. Okay, so the reciprocation between Krishna and his devotees is such that the devotees want to please Krishna and Krishna wants to please his devotees. So devotees want to glorify Krishna and Krishna wants to glorify his devotees. Okay, so this is the way the relationship works, and hence that reciprocation. So most of these things, as we discussed last time, are there in the Shanti Parva of Mahabharata. It starts somewhere around the 63rd chapter, I think. From there on, it's the whole book. Okay. Yeah, verse 26. Purushasvabhava vihitan yatha varnam yatha shramam vairagya rago padibhyam amnato bhaya lakshanam. At Maharaj Yudhishthira's inquiry, Bhishma Dev first defined all the classification of castes and orders of life in terms of the individual's qualifications. Then he systematically, in twofold divisions, described counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. Okay. So, Srila Prabhupada writes that to accelerate the transcendental qualities of the individual person is the purpose of the 4 castes and 4 orders, the Varna and Ashrama. Okay. So, if you see the translation, there are multiple topics which have been discussed. Okay, the classification of Varna and Ashrama is there, then the individual's qualification is there, and then there is this twofold divisions, which is by counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada's purport is also divided accordingly. So first he speaks about the qualities of a civilized person, which is basically the qualification. Okay, and there he says that the Varnashrama Dharma is meant to bring the human being to successfully terminate his human life. And then he lists the qualities that a civilized person should have. So these are the qualifications that one should cultivate when he is following this Varna and Ashrama Dharma. Okay. And then he says that besides these qualifications, the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas and the Shudras must acquire special qualities in terms of occupational duties mentioned in all the Vedic scriptures. So the first 9 which are mentioned here, these are general qualities which everybody should have, irrespective of whether one is a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, which ashrama he belongs to. He should have these qualifications. Then only he can be called as a civilized person. Okay. And specifically for each of the Varnas, you have specific qualifications. Okay. The first one, Srila Prabhupada speaks about the intelligent men. So basically the Brahmanas. Okay. And he says that there are 2-3 things that Brahmanas must do, which is controlling the senses. Okay. A Brahmana must control his senses. Okay. Because it's the basis of morality. And an intelligent man abuses his great qualifications if he does not follow the Vedic way of life. Okay. So the main point is that he should control his senses, and through that is his main point. Okay. And then he should teach others. In the modern system of education, the teacher's academic qualification is taken into consideration without evaluation of his moral life. Therefore, the result of education is misuse of high intelligence in so many ways. So the point is that acharan, or the way a Brahmana conducts himself, that itself should be a lesson for others who learn from him. Okay, his acharan, the way he conducts himself, that itself should be a lesson for people. Then only they can emulate him. But nowadays, if you see in the modern system, then there are teachers. You go to school, colleges, teachers who drink, who smoke. So they are not very ideal. Okay. So the knowledge transfer is also not ideal. And even though whatever they learn, even material education also does not stick. Because one thing is the teacher is not qualified. And by seeing the unqualified teacher, the students are not willing to give them respect. Okay. So because of that, the knowledge, so-called knowledge transfer that is supposed to happen, even material education, is not complete, it's not proper. You write exams and that's it, done. It has no value in life. So therefore, one must control his senses. Brahmanas, the teachers, must control their senses. Then Srila Prabhupada speaks about the Kshatriyas, and he says that Kshatriya must give charity. Okay. And he should not accept charity in any circumstances. And he makes his point that modern administrators raise subscriptions for some political functions, but never give charity to the citizens in any state function. Okay, they never do that. They are ready to take taxes, and we will speak about taxation. So there are so many ways in which the citizens are taxed, and there is no scientific division of the society. So they cannot discriminate between Brahmanas, Vaishyas, Kshatriyas and Shudras amongst their citizens and deal with them accordingly. Okay, so Kshatriya must know who are the Brahmanas in his country, who are the Kshatriyas, who are the Vaishyas, who are the Shudras. But here, it's all a mix. Now everybody is seen as one single entity, equality. And because of that, they cannot do the discrimination. They cannot do that they cannot follow the proper etiquette or do proper justice to people in various matters, in various subject matters. Okay. So one is with respect to charity. Then to be non-violent. Okay. So Prabhupada specifically says here that their energy should be especially directed towards killing the thieves, the dacoits, the black marketeers and all such undesirable elements of society. the administrator should never pretend to become non-violent and thereby go to hell. Okay, so even those who steal, they should also be killed. Okay, it's a heavy punishment, but that stops other person from stealing. It does not encourage stealing that way. And then he says, cowards should not be elected to the presidential throne by dint of numerical votes only. Democratic system, that's how it works now. Okay, and the king or the president should never return home without being hurt by the enemy. Okay, it's actually one of the principles. So what? See, nowadays what happens is that they press a button and that's it. Or they send men, okay, to the war field, but the president anyway is already very old. By the time he becomes president, he's almost 70, 80. Right? The new president of US is almost 80 years old, I think. So what will he go out and fight? No. So this is just this is the case of Shudras taking up the post, the highest administrative post. So under them, the whole governance can never prosper. The people cannot prosper. By definition itself, this is going to doom. Okay. So therefore, this so much upheaval in the society because of this. Because the king or the president should go out and fight. Okay. A leader means one who does things, okay, on his own. No, he goes out and then becomes an inspiration for those who follow him. But in this political situation now, the kings or so-called presidents, they are not the leaders. Okay, they just sit in their office and send innocent citizens to go out and fight. So which is completely nonsense. Okay. As soon as the administrative class is turned into a gang of mercantile and laborer men, the whole machinery of government becomes polluted. Which basically means the administrative class, the Kshatriya class or Kshatriya duties are being carried out by the Vaishyas and Shudras. Okay. And because Vaishyas and Shudras, they are conducted by different modes and they do not have the qualification of a proper Kshatriya, the way they administer the whole government, it only creates a mess. It only creates problems for its citizens. And the Vaishyas, they are supposed to do cow protection. Okay. But they are engaged in all kinds of nonsensical activities. They are also supposed to give charity. Okay. And they are supposed to, Prabhupada makes a very important point here. He says, Kshatriyas were given charge of the protection of the citizens and Vaishyas were given charge of the protection of animals. Okay. But Vaishyas now, or those people whom we call as businessmen, very, very vaguely, we equate the Vaishyas with the modern day businessmen. What they are engaged in is completely against or only based on killing the animals. Not only the slaughterhouses, but even all kinds of products which are manufactured nowadays, they always have some or the other animal products, which means violence to the animals is it's mandatory. It cannot be stopped. So it's society is a mess like this. And yes, so the duties of Shudra, and he says the Shudra class is less intelligent and should have no independence. Okay, they should have no independence, and he should never bank money, which basically means that he should never save money. A Shudra should not have a bank account. Okay, or he should not have any money whatsoever. This is the ideal system. Okay, and because as soon as the Shudras accumulate wealth, what they do is engage that in sinful activities. Okay, so a Kshatriya, the king, should never allow the Shudras to have money. Whenever the Shudra is in need of somebody, he should go and ask the king for charity. Okay, or he should be actually in the system, in the Varnashram proper system, the Shudras are automatically taken care of. Those higher Varnas to whom they serve, then they themselves take care of. Now they serve the Brahmanas take care of their religious activities. They serve the Kshatriyas, then their protection is taken care of. They serve the Vaishyas, then their basic family necessities of food, clothing and other things are taken care of. So Shudra, just by doing his work, okay, he does not have to earn anything. Just by doing his work, he can satisfy himself of all his bodily necessities. Okay. But in modern system, the whole population is full of Shudras and the only thing they do is earn money. Right? Everybody is running after money. So this is in complete opposition to what the actual Varnashrama system is. Okay. Yeah. So this is Srila Prabhupada explains about this classification of caste and order in these four Varnas. And then he speaks about his counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment in the last paragraph. And he says that the varnas, so to speak, the classification of different occupations and ashrama dharma is gradual progress on the path of self-realization. And the purpose of ashrama dharma is to awaken knowledge and detachment. Okay. So in any ashrama one may belong to, either it be brahmacharya ashram, grihastha ashram, vanaprastha or sannyas, one must awaken his transcendental knowledge and should cultivate detachment. Okay. Even in grihastha ashram one is supposed to cultivate detachment. Okay. It is not license to enjoy sense gratification. Some sense gratification is there, but then it should lead one to detachment. Okay. It should not lead one to attachment. If grihastha life is leading someone to more and more slackness in spiritual life, then it's a life of grahamedhi. Right? It's not a grihastha ashrama anymore. Because ashrama is what? Ashrama is where we cultivate spiritual life. But if instead of cultivating spiritual life in ashrama, we cultivate materialistic life, then the purpose is lost. Okay, so the cultivation of knowledge and detachment is the purpose of all the 4 ashramas. So one should not think that only in sannyas ashram we should go. Many people have this idea, right? That once you become old, then we take up spiritual life. Okay, well, that's not the point. Okay, the point is that ashrama life or spiritual life should be taken right from the age of 5. Right? From the age of 5, one gets up into the brahmacharya ashram. So from the age of 5, one should take up spiritual life. Not that he takes up at 55, 60, 70. Things like that. The whole system of ashrama dharma is a means to detachment. Okay, so household life is for one who is attached, and the vanaprastha and sannyas order of life are for those who are detached from material life. The brahmacharya ashram is especially meant for training both the attached and the detached. So even to enter the grihastha ashram, one must undergo brahmacharya ashram. Okay, and if one is strictly able to follow the brahmacharya ashram, then he can directly become a vanaprastha or a sannyasi. Not vanaprastha, but directly he can become a sannyasi. Like this. Okay. Yeah, knowledge and detachment is the goal of all ashramas and not sense enjoyment as considered nowadays. Okay. Association between male and female is for the purpose of detachment and not for enjoying attachment. And this is directly in opposition to what is happening in the modern society. Okay. So in modern society, the association between man and woman is only for the purpose of sense gratification. Because they have no clue whatsoever of what exactly or what is spiritual life or what they are supposed to do. Okay, so living like cats and dogs, as Prabhupada used to say. Yeah, so generally speaking, one who is not able to differentiate between body and soul and is overwhelmed due to his association with the body enters grihastha ashram to regulate his mundane desires. Okay, so when the brahmachari training is going on, but still, this agitation of the mind and senses, then to facilitate, okay, or to regulate, this agitated mind and senses, one can enter the grihastha ashram. Okay, so it's like this, in theory, okay, or one can understand something or realize something just by hearing, and some people have to undergo, that experience, and then they realize. Okay, so in brahmachari life, it's taught that grihastha life is a life of bondage. It cultivates attachment. Okay, it is on the bodily platform. But if one is not able to understand and one is not able to cultivate detachment, then he has to undergo the grihastha life also. And there he practically sees the miseries of life. Okay, and then he cultivates detachment. Okay, so either we experience it or either we learn it. We become more intelligent and learn it. Okay, at the initial start itself. This is generally speaking, but of course, from devotional point of view, if grihastha ashram has to be entered for the sake of service, then because all these things we are speaking is about varna and ashrama, but service to the spiritual master, okay, it goes beyond all the varna and ashrama regulations. So if something has to be done for serving the spiritual master, then it must be done. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, right, na dhanam naham vipro na chanarpiti na piveshna shudro naham varni na jasha grahapatir na arasto ekirva kintu prutanika paramananda purnaprapatir gopi bhartu padakamriya dasa dasana dasa. So we as servants, one who is serving his spiritual master, he does not have to get stuck. Okay, I want to become brahmachari, I will not enter grihastha ashram, or I will enter grihastha ashram. These decisions, okay, we should not get stuck in that. if it's required to serve the spiritual master, his orders to serve the previous acharya and enter the grihastha ashram, it must be done. Okay, it should be done. So that overcomes all this varna and ashrama principles. But from the pure spiritual point of view, we do understand it does not matter in which ashrama we belong to, does not matter in which varna one belongs to. The ultimate goal is to cultivate knowledge and detachment and progress in spiritual life. Okay, so that is required. Yeah, text 27. Dana dharman raja dharman moksha dharman vibhagashah stri dharman bhagavad dharman samasa vyasa yogatah. So again, Srila Prabhupada will speak about this dana dharma, acts of charity, then raja dharma, the activities of a king, okay, then moksha dharma, activities of salvation, then stri dharma and bhagavad dharma, the dharma of devotees. Okay, so the purport is actually, in sequence, it speaks about different things. So he says, he then explained by divisions acts of charity, the pragmatic activities of a king, and activities for salvation. Then he described the duties of women and devotees, both briefly and extensively. Okay, so charity, so anyone, to give charity is one of the householder's main functions. Okay, a brahmachari or student should perform sacrifices, a householder should give charity, and a person in the retired life or in the renounced order should practice penances and austerities. Okay, so irrespective of which varna one belongs to, if he is in a grihastha ashram, he must give charity. Okay, so these things should never be given up. These three things Krishna says, yajna, dana and tapa. These three things should never be given up by anybody. I think it's from the 18th chapter, correct? Yeah. So one who is in grihastha ashram, irrespective of which varna he belongs to, he must give charity. Okay. And a brahmachari should perform sacrifices. Okay, sacrifices for his guru. And the person in the retired life, vanaprastha, or in the renounced order, sannyas, should practice penances and austerities. Okay, so these are the general functions of all ashramas or orders of life on the path of self-realization. And Srila Prabhupada also makes this point that charity basically means that one should give charity for the service of the Lord, because everyone's energy is generated or borrowed from the reservoir of energy of the Lord. Therefore, the resultant actions of such energy must be given to the Lord in the shape of transcendental loving service for Him. So this is the ultimate charity. Okay, charity, when we think of charity, we give charity to the person who is needy or for following our dharma like this. But Srila Prabhupada makes his point here that ultimately all the energy that we have, all the opulences that we have, okay, all the facilities that we have, all these things we have attained by the mercy of the Lord. So therefore it should be given back to the Lord. So charity, the ultimate charity, means giving transcendental loving service to Krishna. Okay, so that is the ultimate charity. As the rivers draw water from the sea through the clouds and again go down to the sea, similarly our energy is borrowed from the Supreme Source and it must be returned to the Lord. Okay, so this is the aspect of charity which Srila Prabhupada brings in this purport. Then he speaks about Raja Dharma. Okay, so again, the kings were trained systematically to become munificent and not merely be tax collectors. Okay, to lead the praja to the attainment of salvation was a great duty of the king. But we have seen that this is not the case in the modern present or in the modern government now. They are merely tax collectors, that is there, and they have no clue of how salvation or how one can or how they can help the praja to become liberated. The government now, or this democratic government or the present day government, what they are engaged in is encouraging the people more and more into sense gratification. Okay, by making so many facilities, okay, and making so many avenues so that people can make money, okay, and also giving lots and lots of opportunities for different objects of sense gratification. What the government has done is basically instigated or basically has started this whole or changed the consciousness of all the citizens to be engaged only in animalistic activities of sense gratification. Okay. And this is because in modern days the people in general occupy the administration by strength of manipulated votes. Okay, so those who are less intelligent, Shudras and Vaishyas, who are the max majority of the whole population, if they are electing somebody, then they also elect unqualified people. And these unqualified people are put in charge of leading further unqualified people. So blind leading the blind. It's a classic case of blind leading the blind. So there is no cultivation of spiritual knowledge or detachment. Rather, the whole setup is that one remains in ignorance and one cultivates only attachment to sense gratification. So that way, the whole citizen, all the people within the government, they are being led to doom. They are basically led to hellish situation in their next life. And the administrators also, who are there, they are also going to go to hellish situation only. So because untrained administrator gradually becomes rogues and thieves and increase the taxation to finance a top-heavy administration that is useless for all purposes. A typical king is the ideal of the people in general, and if the king is pious, religious, chivalrous, and munificent, the citizens generally follow him. So, citizens cannot be blamed. It's actually the leader who is to be blamed. Okay, if the leader is proper, then citizens automatically follow him, and if the leader is not proper, then most of the citizens will only follow the leader. Okay, if the leader is proper, they are in the right path. If the leader is not proper, he's a thief himself, that citizen will also start stealing. Okay, so crime increasing. Crime is increasing. So many problems are increasing in the society. So from this we can understand that because the administrators or those who have taken up the top positions, because they themselves are thieves, they themselves are criminals, therefore the crime is increasing within the state. Okay, people speak about crime against women. If you are aware of this, what is happening outside in this world, so there's so much halla of crime against women, crime against children, human trafficking, this thing, terrorism, all those things. This is because the leaders themselves are like that. Okay, the leaders themselves are cultivating such qualities, and because of that, the citizens who are following these leaders, they also become rogues and thieves. Okay. So the thieves and dacoits were punished in an exemplary way, so that in future no one would commit any nuisances like this. But such thieves and dacoits were never given positions of administration as they are now. So the leaders have become thieves and dacoits. Thieves and dacoits have become the leaders. So what will they do? They encourage the citizens also to do stealing, cheating, all kinds of nonsensical activities. Okay. So therefore it's a big mess. This whole material world is a big mess. Taxation. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada says the king has had a right to take 1/4 of the production made by the subject. And because everybody was prosperous, they were not having any problems in giving that back to the king. Okay. And whenever there is a calamity, there is famine, there is drought, or there is earthquake, or some natural calamities are there, or some emergency is there like war and all, the king was, he already had the resources. Okay. He does not have to go and ask or beg for charity. If any natural calamity comes, then this Pradhan Mantri Yojana that comes up, where the government asks people to give charity. It happens many times. If there is this earthquake comes or something happens and there's loss of lives, loss of material property, then the government says, I don't have any fund. I don't have any money, because all the money which they get from the citizens, it's already spent, or it's already there in their own bank accounts. So they don't have money. They want more money from the citizens. Okay. So they take more money. So they request, this Pradhan Mantri, this Prime Minister Relief Fund will come many times. These things did not happen in previous times. The citizens were taxed. Okay. The Brahmanas were never taxed. The Shudras were never taxed. Okay. Because Shudra cannot bank money. What will they give? They only give service. And Brahmanas, they don't have money. They get charity, and whatever they get, whatever they need for bare minimum, they'll use that. Rest, everything else, they'll give again in charity. So the Brahmana should accept charity and give charity also. So he does not have anything. The Shudras don't have anything. It's only the Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas. And these two, and most probably the Vaishyas, this one Varna used to support the whole society. It was so prosperous because the king was so religious. Now the whole system has become such a mess that nothing is proper. And they have to accept charity. So that way, if we see, the whole system is No, it's a place of only sinful activities because dharma is not followed. None of the varnas or none of the ashramas are following their dharma properly. So when dharma is not followed, it basically means it's adharma. So everybody is just creating a bad situation for themselves in the next life. Okay, some are severe and some are not that severe. So Srila Prabhupada finally he says that personal qualification is required to attain to the post of to the high post or to the post of governance, and it should not be based on votes. Even the ministers, the military commanders, and the ordinary soldiers were all selected by personal qualification. Okay, and the king would give special protection to illiterates, the helpless, and widows of the state. Then Srila Prabhupada speaks about conquering over lower tendencies. Okay. Yeah, this is multiple things Srila Prabhupada speaks about here. And how one can conquer the lower tendencies by following certain activities. No, by spiritual culture, one is able to conquer sleep. Okay, disturbances from various diseases can be avoided by regulated diets. And like this, there are many things. So one must be free from lust, avarice, anger, dreaming, etc. to actually attain the path of salvation. Okay, so lust should be avoided. Avarice means intense greed to attain something. That is called avarice. Okay, and anger. Then dreaming. Okay, so dreaming, one who dreams a lot cannot attain the path of salvation. Yes.
Dreaming means sleeping or seeing?
No, dreaming means no kind of daydreaming. Okay, daydreaming or always in your mentally speculative thoughts, or always revolving in your mind, thinking of something different. Not basically doing some activity. Okay. So one who dreams a lot. Yeah. Women, okay, shyness is most important for women. Once this control valve is loosened, women can create havoc in society by adultery. Okay, so this is also quite prominent and visible in the society now. Okay, so the children who are born in the present society are all Varnashankaras. Okay, all total. Varnashankara basically means their mind is not steady. They cannot identify themselves with one particular Varna. And that means that they do not know what their duty is. So they have mixed characteristics. And when they have mixed characteristics, then they cannot fix themselves in one particular aspect. And that way their whole life is led in a state of confusion. And when someone is confused, and there are people, we are all living in a society, and one is confused, and there are other people who are also confused in different ways, then it creates problems in the whole society. So these are all contributing factors to whatever nonsensical things we see in the modern society now. Okay, all this Varna and Ashrama, if these things are not followed properly, then ultimately, and women are not protected, it leads to Varna Shankara, and totally, it's a total mess. It's such a complicated mesh that it's very difficult to untangle it. And the last point Srila Prabhupada makes is Bhagavad Dharma. Right? We have this Tri Dharma and Bhagavad Dharma. And he says that the last item that Bhishmadev taught was this. The simple process of pleasing the Lord, for the householders especially, is to install the deity of the Lord at home, and by concentrating on the deity, one may progressively go on with daily routine work. And then he says, these 5 things which are most important to please the Lord: worshipping deities, serving the devotees, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, residing in holy place, and chanting the holy name. Okay, so these are things which Bhishmadev explained to Maharaj Yudhishthir. Okay, I think we are spending lots of time on this. Dharmartha kama mokshamscha sahopayan yatha mune nanakhyane tihaseshu varnayama satatvavit. Then he described the occupational duties of different orders and statuses of life, citing instances from history, for he was himself well acquainted with the truth. Okay. Srila Prabhupada says that the Vedic literatures as Puranas, Mahabharatas and Ramayanas are factual histories that took place, and these are instructive. These histories are recorded in the Puranas and Mahabharatas because it is instructive for people. It's not that just stories are there. It is for encouraging people to follow Dharma. Okay. So at many places, no, in Mahabharata, at least when we were discussing, in Mahabharata, many places, some of the personalities will be glorified a lot. Maharaj Shibi is glorified a lot. Recently we had this session. So wherever Maharaj Shibi appeared so many times, so his qualification is that he gave charity. Okay, he was very truthful. He never displayed anger. Okay, and then he was glorified like that. And he was glorified by great people of the society. So conditioned soul has a tendency to be glorified. Okay, when he sees that the great people glorify such people who have these qualities, then they tend to follow or tend to emulate those qualities of charity, of being truthful, of being not showing anger. So through these stories, through the instances of these stories, it is taught to people in general that these are the qualifications or these are the qualities that one person should develop. Okay. And these things, these instances, they happen on different planets. Prabhupada says different universes. And thus the description of the narration is sometimes measured by 3 dimensions. Okay. Yeah, text 29. Dharmam pravadatastasya sakala pratyupasthitah yoyoginashchanda mrityor vanchitastuttarayanaha. While Bhishma Dev was describing occupational duties, the sun's course ran into the northern hemisphere. This period is desired by mystics who die at their will. Okay, so Prabhupada speaks about reaching the highest planetary system. And he says, perfection of yoga means attainment of a supramental state that enables one to leave the material body as desired and reach any planet within no time without any of the material vehicles so much advertised by the less intelligent materialistic scientists. Okay, so we saw a little bit of this in our previous session, right? About the Srila Prabhupada speaks about this devotee, a yogi, who has taken up this devotional service, how he leaves his body. Okay, and a yogi can leave the material body as desired. Okay, so Bhishma Dev had the benediction to leave his body when he desired, but that was a benediction. But yogis, who have perfected this yoga process, they also, we can see they also have the benediction where they can leave their body whenever they desire, and they can go to any planet, to whichever planet they want to go. Okay, so two things they can do. They can leave whenever they want, and they can go to any planet, whichever they desire. Okay. But modern people, they want to go to the moon, they want to go to the Mars, but they don't have the qualification, and they'll never be able to go. So those people who say that we went to the moon, we know that they did not go to the moon. Okay, because it's a different science. Okay, it's a different science, and Bhishma Dev knew well how to utilize it. Okay, and it also shows Bhishma's quality that for us, when we see the sun, we do not see any change in the sun's course. Maybe over a period of time, we can see the sun is moving towards north. This Uttarayana is happening or Dakshinayana is happening. Right? The sun rises from the east, but then it gradually moves towards the north. Okay, over a period of 6 months. And in the Dakshinayana, the sun rises from the east only, but gradually moves towards the south direction. So this can be seen. But Bhishma Dev was so qualified that he could find out the exact moment when the sun started moving towards the northern hemisphere, okay, which is basically impossible for us to determine. Yeah, so human energy is wasted to such an extent that those who are to die want to go to another planet to die. So basically means they want to go to moon and Mars, and what is the result? They are going to die there, right? Because death cannot be stopped. So all this endeavor is being made for what? Just like a childish inquisitiveness. A child, Prabhupada used to say, he plays with this rocket during this Diwali, and then they are sending big rockets, and that's the only difference. They send big rockets, child send, or the boys send small rockets. Okay. So what's the point? There's no point. So it is better to go to a better planet after death than make humongous endeavor to go to a better planet, fail in it, and then go to lower planets or to hell. Right? So this is what it is. So what they are doing is they are making such an endeavor to go to the moon, to the Mars, or to other planets to explore the space and do things like that. But ultimately it's going to leave them, or they are going to fail in that anyways. Nobody is going to reach the moon or the Mars or to the other planets. They are going to fail in it, and because their whole life have been sinful, they are not going to go to the higher planets anyways. they are going to go to the lower planets only, to hellish planets. Okay. So modern endeavor to go to other planets using material vehicle is pinnacle of stupidity, and India has fallen into the same trap, forgetting its Vedic roots. This is unfortunate, okay, because this knowledge is available in our country, in India, but we are also in this whole space race. We also send rockets, and we are very proud of it. Anyway, there are so many social problems within India itself. Everything is always. We have this hunger problem. We have the problem of availability of water, drought, earthquakes, and things like that. But we are spending millions and millions of dollars of money in sending some rockets, which is anyway going to fail according to the Vedic system. And this knowledge is available in India, but still people are not ready to utilize it. So India's position is very, very bad, that way, as Srila Prabhupada used to say. Okay, so Bhishmadeva's position is such that he need not wait for an opportune moment to depart, as Sri Krishna is directly present in front of him. How can anything be inauspicious? So it's not that this verse says that Bhishma, he saw that Uttarayana has started, but then he did not have to wait for Uttarayana because Krishna himself is present. So this is just an indication that his time to depart has come. Okay, so this verse just indicates that now Bhishmadeva, after he has spoken so much, which will be explained in the next verse, after speaking so much, now it's a time for him to depart. The time has come, being inspired by the Lord. Tadopasanhritya gira sahasranir vimukta sangam mana adi purushe krishnela satpita pate chaturbhuje purasthite militadrigvyadharayat. Thereupon, that man who spoke on different subjects with thousands of meanings, and who fought on thousands of battlefields and protected thousands of men, stopped speaking, and being completely freed from all bondage, withdrew his mind from everything else and fixed his wide open eyes upon the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who stood before him, four-handed, dressed in yellow garments that glittered and shone. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada explains the art of going back to Godhead, and in this he quotes the verses from the 8th chapter. Right, Antakale Chamaveva, from that verse onwards till Kavim Puranam. No, the next one. Okay, yeah. So he says that if one is absorbed in thoughts of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, he is sure to go back to Godhead without any doubt. Okay. Then Srila Prabhupada says that Sri Bhishmadeva attained the perfection of quitting his body at will and was fortunate enough to have Lord Krishna, the object of his attention, personally present at the time of death. He therefore fixed his open eyes upon him. He wanted to see Lord Sri Krishna for a long time out of his spontaneous love for him. Because he was a pure devotee, he had very little to do with the detailed performance of yogic principles, since Bhakti Yoga is enough to bring about perfection. Therefore, the ardent desire of Bhishmadev was to see the person of Lord Krishna, the most lovable object, and by the grace of the Lord, Sri Bhishmadev had his opportunity at the last stage of his breathing. Okay. So this is the process. When Bhishmadev he came to understand that he's about to leave, then what he did was not control his breathing process. Okay, enter into pranayam or enter into samadhi, close his eyes like this. Okay, Srila Prabhupada, and in the 6th chapter in Bhagavad Gita it's mentioned, when a yogi he has to do his Ashtanga Yoga, what he does is he sits in that particular asana, okay, which is neither too high, neither too low. Okay, then he has to sit in a deer skin, or wearing deer skin, half close his eyes, meditate on between the eyebrows. In 8th chapter also it's mentioned here. So Bhishma did not do all those things. What he did was open his eyes and see Krishna, and that's it. That's the ultimate goal. That's the way of living one's body. So this is Bhakti Yoga, which is very simple. Just seeing the Lord is equivalent. Okay, seeing the Lord with love and affection, devotion, is equivalent to all the mystic performances or all the yogic processes that the Ashtanga yogis follow. Yam, Niyam, Pranayam, Asan, Dhan, Dhyana, Samadhi, all those things, Pratyahar. A Bhakti yogi did not do or does not have to do all those things. Just have affection for the Lord and look at Him with that affection, and then he can go back home, back to Godhead. Okay, that's what we learn from Bhishma Dev. Vishuddhaya dharanaya hatashrubhas tadikshayaiva shrukatayudhashramah nivritta sarvendriya vritti vibhramas tushtavajanyam visajanjanardanam. By pure meditation, looking at Lord Shri Krishna, he at once was freed from all material inauspiciousness and was relieved of all bodily pains caused by the arrow wounds. Thus, all the external activities of his senses at once stopped, and he prayed transcendently to the controller of all living beings while quitting his material body. Okay. So, Srila Prabhupada in his purport, he says that Bhishma Dev attained this transcendental position by the grace of Krishna. He says, identification with the material body is due to forgetfulness of our eternal relationship with the Lord. And for a pure devotee, the illusion was at once removed as soon as the Lord arrived. Okay, and in the presence of the sun, there is no possibility of darkness. Similarly, in the presence of Lord Krishna, there is no possibility of any illusion. So therefore, just on the arrival of Lord Krishna, all his material contamination was completely removed. Okay. Yeah. And so similar to how Dhruva Maharaj was purified by touch of the Lord, Bhishma Dev was freed from all material contamination by seeing the Lord. Since the Lord is absolute, he can establish a devotee into transcendental position through any means. Okay, so just by looking at the Lord, Bhishma Dev was completely became detached from all the activities of his external senses as well as his material body. Okay, so the prayers that follow, these are actually prayed from the transcendental platform. Okay, Bhishma's prayers are from the spiritual platform, are from the transcendental platform. Shri Bhishma Uvacha Iti Matirupakalpita Vitrishna Bhagavati Satvata Punge Vibhumni Svasukham Upagate Kvachid Vihartam Prakritim Upayushi Yad Bhava Pravaha. Bhishma Dev said, "Let me now invest my thinking, feeling and willing, which was so long engaged in different subjects and occupational duties, in the all-powerful Lord Shri Krishna. He is always self-satisfied, but sometimes, being the leader of the devotees, he enjoys transcendental pleasure by descending to the material world, although it is from him only that the material world is created." Okay, so there are multiple things that Srila Bhishma Dev prays about. This is Matir Upakalpita. May my mind be invested in you. My thinking, my process of thinking, my process of feeling, my process of willing, everything should be invested in you, and I should not have any tinge of any sense desire with Krishna. Okay. Bhagavati, onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Satvata Pungave, who is the leader of the Sattvatas, of the pure devotees. Okay. Vibhumni, one who is very great. Who is Swasukham Upagate, means one who is already situated or has attained happiness. Okay. So even though he is always in a blissful state, still, Kvachid, sometimes what he does is Vihartum Prakritim Upayushi. He comes to the material world for the pleasure of devotees. Okay, to have pastimes with his devotees, although this material world is created by him only. Yad Bhava Pravaha. The material world came from him. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada in his purport, he speaks about these different glories of Krishna. Matir Upakalpita Vitrishna. He says that Bhishma Dev's mind was strewn over so many subjects, being a administrator. Okay, he has lived for a very long life, and he has gone through so many subject matters, okay, in his life. So in order to achieve pure devotional service, he wanted to invest all powers of thinking, feeling and willing entirely in the Supreme Being, Lord Krishna. And who that Lord Krishna is his Satvata Pungave. Okay, he is described as the leader of devotees and all powerful. Okay. And pure devotees of the Lord have no desire other than the service of the Lord, and therefore they are called Sattvatas. Okay, so pure devotees are called Sattvatas for this particular purpose. And the Lord is the chief amongst such Sattvatas. And Bhishma Dev, he wanted to completely become free. Or rather, he had no desires and he was completely free from all material desires. And therefore, he wanted to bring his whole attention to the Supreme Lord. Srila Prabhupada also says that unless one is purified from all sorts of material desires, the Lord does not become one's leader. Desires cannot be wiped out, but they have only to be purified. Okay. So desires are always there. The desires are not a product of material interaction. Okay. Desires come from the soul. They come from the spirit. So desires cannot be removed. The desires have to be purified. Okay. And if the desires are not completely purified, then it is not possible to meditate on the Lord completely. Our thinking, feeling and willing will always be agitated, or it will always be diverted, or it will become diverted if we have some material desires also. Okay, if there is a thought of sense desire, or if there is a thought that okay, even though one might not be indulging in sense gratification, but if he has his desire, sense desire basically means that one thinks that one can gain happiness by engaging his sense in that particular sense object. Okay, that is called a sense desire. Desire basically means that one can attain some amount of happiness, or there is happiness in sense gratification. This is called a sense desire. And one who thinks that there can be happiness by interaction of the sense and sense objects, he will not be able to completely focus on the Lord through his thinking, feeling and willing. It's not possible for him to focus his mind on Krishna if he has sense desires. So this training, this whole sadhana bhakti process, where we follow the rules and regulations or the injunctions given by the spiritual master, it's a practice. Okay, we might have sense desires now, but by this practice we gain taste, and by this higher taste, the lower taste of sense gratification must be uprooted. It must be removed. Okay, and when that is done, then only it is possible to have complete attention on Krishna. The mind will be completely fixed. Okay, or else, so many devotees say, mind, when we are chanting, the mind is disturbed, mind goes here, there. We all have faced this kind of problems. So this is because we are not completely purified. And when we say we are not purified, that means we have sense desires within us. It might be because of our samskaras, or we might have cultivated that in our life, in this lifetime also. So sense desires, whether coming from the previous life or sense desires which are cultivated before coming to devotional life, all of them have to be uprooted, and only then the mind can be fixed on Krishna. Otherwise it is not possible. Otherwise, it's just like a seesaw. Sometimes the mind is fixed on Krishna, sometimes we want to engage in sense gratification, and it keeps on going like this. Okay, so we can never attain the position of nishtha. So when we say anartha nivritti means that we do away with all kinds of sense gratification, and then nishtha can happen. Okay, or else nishtha will never happen. Okay, one cannot be steadily fixed in devotional service if there are sense desires also. So one's thinking, feeling and willing, one's mind must be focused on Krishna. That itself will purify the sense desires. So it's both ways. Okay, for purification of sense desires, the mind should be focused on Krishna. But if the sense desires are still there, then we will not be able to focus on Krishna. Okay, so therefore a conscious endeavor must be made from our side, so that we always think of Krishna, we always chant his holy names, and by that we don't have to make an extra endeavor or an additional endeavor to remove all our sense desires. Okay, or the idea of sense gratification or the impurities within the heart. We don't have to make a specific endeavor to do that if we automatically fix our mind in Krishna 24 hours a day. Whenever it gets diverted, bring it back. Okay, that conscious endeavor should be there, and automatically it will go off. Okay, by the process of Sankirtan. Okay, it will happen. But if you are cultivating sense desires, then it's very difficult. Okay. And as Krishna says, even one of the roaming senses can take a man of steady intelligence away from the path of spiritual life. Correct? In Bhagavad Gita he says. So, if one of the roaming senses, we have 5 senses, what to speak of one. One of the roaming senses can take us somewhere else from a spiritual path. So, practicing devotee should be very, very careful or very, very fixed in following the rules and regulations. Because desires cannot be wiped out, but they have only to be purified. So, purification must be there. Such instruction is given not for any material purpose, but only for going back home, back to Godhead. Okay. For the ordinary man who wants to lord it over material nature, the Lord only sanctions and becomes a witness of activities. But he never gives the non-devotee instructions for going back to Godhead. Okay, so, one's desire or goal is the determining factor in Krishna's reciprocation. Okay, one's desire or what one's goal is determines how Krishna reciprocates with us. Okay, this differentiates a devotee and non-devotee. Non-devotees think they don't need Krishna, and because of that, he only sanctions and witnesses their activities. They never realize his personal presence because he is not personally involved with them. Okay, as such, he does not have personal interaction with them because they don't need his personal interaction. So he only has this, he sanctions their activities and he witnesses their activities, and based on their karma, he puts them into another corresponding life. Okay, in the next life. So that's it. That's that much only Krishna does with those people. But those who take personal interest in him, then Krishna reciprocates with them accordingly. Okay. So since they don't want Krishna, the non-devotees don't want Krishna, they never get him. But by associating with a pure devotee, then they can develop desire for Krishna. And then Krishna takes personal interest in them. Okay, so only one who takes up devotional service or who has this desire or goal to take up devotional service, then Krishna starts paying personal attention to that person. Okay, even though he's equal to everybody, but still he's equal such that if you desire, he can give you, or he can give his personal attention. But if you don't want to interact with him, then he will not interact with you. It's like that. Okay. So then, Srila Prabhupada says that the Lord also desires the association of his pure devotees, and for them only the Lord descends to the earth and enlivens them. So even though he is fully satisfied in his own transcendental spiritual position, just for the sake of his devotees, okay, he comes to this material world, okay, and he enlivens them. So, dharma samsthapanarthaya sabhami yoge. What is that? Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam. So Acharyas explain, this aspect of paritranaya sadhunam is more important for Krishna than vinashaya cha dushkritam, than to annihilate the demons. That he can do, by his willing, the demons will be annihilated. But to give pleasure to the devotees, to protect the devotees, Krishna takes personal interest in them. So that's how dear the devotees are to Krishna, that he himself comes to the material world. So that's why even though he is completely satisfied, there are millions and trillions, unlimited devotees are serving him in the spiritual realm, still he comes to the material world only for the sake of few devotees who are here. Just shows how affectionate Krishna is to each and every devotee, each and every living entity. Okay, it's not that he's being served in spiritual world very grandly, nicely. He already has everything that he needs. Anyway, it's Krishna. He has everything what he needs. Okay, but still, even for those few living entities who are devotees of the Lord within this material realm, he comes specifically for them, and he performs even those pastimes which he does not do in the spiritual world. Okay, so that is his glory. That is his affection for his devotees. So, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, he says, he attains profusely the highest bliss with his own Yadavas and Pandavas. The main qualities of the Lord have thus been described. So, in the verse, this still this Bhagavati Satvata Pungave Vibhumni Swasukham Upagate. So, he enjoys Swasukham Upagate. He attains pleasure by being with his devotees, the Yadavas and the Pandavas. So these are his main qualities. Next, secondary qualities are described where he contacts Maya by glancing for evolving Mahatattva, from which arises the sequence of material creation. You do this in your forms of the Purushavatara. So this is the Yadbhava Pravaha. Okay, so till this point, it is about the devotees, Krishna's interaction with his devotees. And then his secondary quality is that he is the one who is creating this material realm. Krishna Chakravarti Thakur writes like this. Okay, verse 33. Tribhuvana kamanam tamala varnam ravikara gauravarambaram dadhane vapuralaka kula vritananabjam vapura alaka kula vritananabjam vijaya sakhe ratirastu mena vadya. Shri Krishna is the intimate friend of Arjuna. He has appeared on this earth in his transcendental body, which resembles the bluish color of the tamal tree. His body attracts everyone in the 3 planetary systems, upper, middle and lower. May his glittering yellow dress and his lotus face, covered with paintings of sandalwood pulp, be the object of my attraction, and may I not desire fruitive results. Okay, so now Bhishma Dev, he describes the beautiful transcendental body of Krishna. And he says that he resembles the bluish color of tamal tree. Okay, and his body, his form attracts everyone in the 3 planetary systems, and he's wearing a yellow dress. Okay, which is if you see the Sanskrit, it's Ravikara Gaura Varambaram Dadhane. Okay, Ravikara means the sun, the rays of the sun. Okay, his yellow or his dhoti is glittering like the rays of the sun, and Dadhane, he wears such kind of a dhoti. Okay, and Vapur, his body is covered with the paintings of sandalwood pulp, and his face is just like a lotus, Anana Abjam. And who is he? He is Vijaya Sakhe. He is the friend of Arjuna, and may my attraction be always reposed upon him who has, who looks like this, and who is the friend of Arjuna. So Krishna is the most attractive. Okay. When Krishna, by his internal pleasure, appears on earth, he does so by the agency of his internal potency. The attractive features of his transcendental body are desired in all the 3 worlds, namely the upper, middle and lower planetary systems. Nowhere in the universe are there such beautiful bodily features as those of Lord Krishna. Therefore, his transcendental body has nothing to do with anything materially created. Okay, so Krishna's form is the most attractive. Okay, and everybody is attracted. Everybody is attracted to beauty. Correct? Beauty always attracts everybody. If someone is beautiful, we get attracted to them. But the quality of beauty actually is complete, or it's full in Krishna. So in that way, everybody is attracted to Krishna. Because when we speak about beauty, the only thing, as a living entity, when we get attracted to something, from philosophical point of view, the living entity is part and parcel of Krishna. So the only attraction that he can have is for Krishna. Okay, the living entity can get attracted only to Krishna, not to anything else. But when he's covered by this material covering, then the tendency, the desire is there to get attracted, or the tendency is there to get attracted. So then he gets attracted to material forms. Okay, he gets attracted to material forms. Okay, but the principle of attraction, it arises from Krishna only. His tendency is to get attracted to Krishna. So when he gets attracted to material forms also, so those material forms also possess some quality of Krishna. Okay, the quality of beauty, the quality of opulence, and the quality of knowledge. All the material objects also in a very, very mild or in a very, very dim, a fraction of percentage of Krishna's quality also exist within this material world. And that is where the living entity gets attracted, or the conditioned soul gets attracted to that particular quality of that material form, which in fact those material forms quality has been given by Krishna only. And this is explained in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. No? We speak Vibhuti Yoga. So all the great things which we see in this material world are the Vibhutis of Krishna, are the qualities of Krishna, are the manifestation of his qualities. That basically means his potency is there. And what the living entity is basically getting attracted to when he gets attracted to material forms is the potency of Krishna. Is it complicated? No. No, right? You have known this. Okay. So he gets attracted to the potency of Krishna. So the living entity's basic necessity or the living entity's main position or constitution itself is to get attracted to Krishna. So what he is getting attracted to basically, even in his conditioned form, is Krishna only. Or the aspects or the energy of Krishna or the potencies of Krishna. But he is not aware of it.
Indirect.
So in that way, it's indirect case. So in that way, everybody is attracted to Krishna. Okay, because he is the most attractive. And when Krishna comes in his personal form, then what to speak of that? No, he is the most beautiful. So the living entity is automatically drawn to Krishna. The purified living entity is automatically drawn to Krishna. Okay, he cannot have even one single moment without looking at Krishna. Either in his prakat form when he's there in front of you, or if he's not in front of you, then in his aprakat form. You know, he's always there, etched in the devotee's mind. Okay, because Krishna is so attractive, he's so beautiful. Vijaya Sakhe. So, Bhishma Deva's meditation. While fighting was going on between Arjuna and Bhishma, Bhishma's attraction was drawn by the glittering dress of Krishna, and indirectly he admired his so-called enemy Arjuna for possessing the Lord as his friend. Arjuna was always the conqueror because the Lord was his friend. So therefore Bhishma takes the opportunity to address the Lord as Vijaya Sakhe. And because the Lord is pleased when he is addressed conjointly with his devotees who are related with him in different transcendental humors. So Krishna is pleased when he is addressed along with his devotees. Okay. Yeah, one important point that Srila Prabhupada makes here is that a genuine relation of a living being with the Supreme Lord can take any form out of the 5 principal rasas, and it does not make any difference in transcendental degree to the genuine devotee. Bhishma Dev is a concrete example of this, and it should be carefully observed how the great general is transcendentally related with the Lord. So Bhishma was not envious of Arjuna for being intimately related to Krishna and having Krishna as his charioteer, amongst other activities he did for them. In the spiritual realm, there is no enviousness or competition for superiority, including superiority in rasa, as is sometimes thought of. I'll explain this. The center is Krishna, so all the devotees have only one thought, how to please Krishna. Bhishma Dev called Krishna Vijay Sakha because Krishna likes to hear himself being called as such. And this is discussed in the 22nd verse of this purport. Okay. So, even though Bhishma's attraction was drawn by the glittering dress of Krishna, and indirectly he admired his so-called enemy Arjuna for possessing the Lord as his friend. Arjuna was always a conqueror because the Lord was his friend. So Bhishma, he did not think that he could not be in the position of Arjuna. Okay, he did not think like that. Sometimes devotee think that one rasa of the 5 rasas, some rasas are more important, than other rasas. Like this, that kind of understanding is there, which actually it's not possible to understand in our conditioned stage of whether there is a differentiation between different rasas and other things. Our acharyas do explain that the Madhurya rasa is the topmost rasa because there the love is completely manifested. Okay, but in this case, we see that even though Arjuna was directly, he's a Sakha, he's a Vijaya Sakha, Krishna said that. So he is the friend of Krishna, but Bhishma is not exhibiting any competition or enviousness, even though he is situated in the Dasya Rasa. Okay, because the attention or the focus of every devotee, being situated in his own rasa, is to please Krishna. So if by addressing Krishna as Vijaya Sakha, he is able to please Krishna, then that is the relationship between the devotee and Krishna. Okay, he is not vying, that all of them should attain the Madhurya Rasa and there is nobody in Sakhya Rasa or Vatsalya Rasa. It's not like that. Okay, all the devotees, their whole focus is only on serving Krishna. Okay, and Krishna can be served in unlimited ways. Okay, principally in these 5 different rasas. So definitely devotees should be there or are there in all the 5 rasas. And in each of the rasas, Krishna reciprocates with them in fullness, in complete. Okay, so Krishna, there should be Mother Yashoda. There should be those devotees who are having this Vatsalya rasa for Krishna. There should be those devotees who are in Sakhya rasa with Krishna, because Krishna wants such kind of relationship. He desires, he has those kind of relationships. So this mundane consideration of which rasa is superior and which rasa is inferior, it's actually mundane. Okay, it's not that way. From a purely spiritual point of view, now acharyas do explain the different gradations. But from our point of view, okay, it's not important for us. Our whole goal is how Krishna can be pleased. Okay, so this is why, Bhishma at multiple places we will see that he will address Krishna as Vijay Sakha, Partha Sakha, like this, again and again. One is because he's attracted to that form of the Lord, where Arjuna is there on the chariot and Krishna is sitting as his charioteer, Partha Sarthi. He's attracted to that form. And another is he's also glorifying the position of Arjuna and pleasing Krishna in that way by doing that glorification of Krishna with relation to Arjuna, like this. Okay. And so go to verse 34. युधि तुरगरजो विधूम्र विश्वक कचलुलित श्रमवारि अलंकृतास्ये मम निशित शरैर्विभिद्यमान त्वचि विलसत् कवचेस्तु कृष्ण आत्मा. On the battlefield where Shri Krishna attended Arjuna out of friendship, the flowing hair of Lord Krishna turned ashen due to the dust raised by the hoofs of the horses. And because of his labor, beads of sweat wetted his face. All these decorations, intensified by the wounds on his skin, dealt by my sharp arrows, were enjoyed by him. Let my mind thus go on to Shri Krishna. Okay, in the previous verse, Bhishma Dev, he speaks about the beauty of Krishna. Okay, and in this verse he says, even if he is in the battlefield, okay, his hair is completely flowing. Okay, it's not combed properly, or it's not in proper place. It's completely flowing here and there. His face and his hair is covered by dust, which is raised by the hoofs of the horses. Okay, and sweat has appeared in his face. Obviously, dust is also in his face, and sweat is there in his face. And there are wounds in his body. Okay, where blood is also coming out. So all those things were happening, but still, he looks very beautiful. Okay, and my mind should be attached to this form of the Lord, even though he from this mundane point of view. Okay, one who has undergone all these things, or one whose face is completely black, or his hair is completely scattered, and there's sweat all over his body, and there are wounds over his body, is normally not attractive. Okay, but in Krishna's case, these acts like decorations on the body of Krishna, and it becomes very attractive. And this is what Bhishma Dev wants to meditate on. Okay, this is the form of Lord Parthasarathi. So Srila Prabhupada says that relationship with the Lord is absolute. So shooting arrows with love is same as offering flowers with love. Prabhupada says so any service, anything is accepted by the Lord, if is graciously accepted by the Lord when offered to the Lord in genuine love and affection. Sri Bhishma Dev is a great devotee of the Lord in the relation of servitorship. Thus, his throwing of sharp arrows at the transcendental body of the Lord is as good as the worship of another devotee who throws soft roses upon him. So, it is not the item which we offer. It is based on the rasa and the love and affection that the devotee has for the Lord. Okay. So, it's same as as putting garland on the deity. Bhishma shooting arrows at Krishna is just like putting garlands or offering flowers to him. Okay, because this is very important, because it shows that Krishna only sees the love and affection of his devotees. Okay, that does not mean that we shoot arrows, because we have no rasa at this point of time. We are still trying to cultivate. Okay, so we do whatever acharyas have asked us to do. Okay, and then whatever rasa we come up to, that's different story. At this point of time, we do the sadhana bhakti process is like this. Okay, but those who are pure devotees, who are transcendently situated in that rasa, Okay, with them, Krishna's reciprocation can be in any way. Okay, it can be through flowers, the medium can be flowers, or the medium can be sharp arrows also. The medium can be anything, but how affectionate or how one devotee expresses love for Krishna, that is what is most important. Okay, so that's why this Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, 2 times Krishna speaks about his bhakti. Right? Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yomya Bhaktya Prayachati Tadaham Bhakti Upahritam Ashtami Pradatmana. How can Krishna get satisfied just by water, leaf, fruit? He's the Supreme Lord. At least something opulent we should give. But he gets satisfied just by one leaf. Okay, he does not even tell which leaf. He gives him one leaf, he gets satisfied. So what is Krishna looking at basically? He's basically looking at our affection, our bhakti. So it does not matter what we offer to him, but we offer him devotion. That is what he's looking at. Okay. It's very important for us. This mode we should imbibe. So whatever we do, whatever spiritual activities we do, kirtans, everything, that intense emotion. It might not be spontaneous, but we should try to cultivate that emotion for Krishna, love for Krishna. It should be there. It kind of envelop all our services that we do. Okay, that should be there. And Srila Prabhupada says that, in this verse, Bhishma says that his body was wounded. Krishna's body was intensified by the wounds on his skin. So Srila Prabhupada gives the perspective that Krishna's body is not matter. Okay, and both he and himself and his body, both he himself and his body are complete spiritual identity. So spirit is never pierced, burnt, dried or moistened. Right? Basically from 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and it's also explained in Skanda Purana. Krishna says, Prabhupada says, when Lord Vishnu in his incarnation appears before us, he seems to be like one of the conditioned souls, materially engaged just to bewilder the asuras or the non-believers who are always alert to kill the Lord. Okay, so there might be apparent marks of wound or marks of arrows on Krishna's body, but Krishna was not suffering like a normal human being. Okay, because his body is transcendental, the spirit is transcendental. He is the supreme spirit. So this is just to bewilder the conditioned souls. Okay, and not that we think that Krishna is undergoing that suffering. So Bhishma's piercing of the body of Lord Krishna is a sort of bewildering problem for the non-devotee atheist. But those who are devotees or liberated souls are not bewildered. Okay. So this, when Prabhupada says, it's a bewildering problem for the non-devotee atheist. It's like this, when it is said that Krishna has a transcendental body, okay, and then this verse also comes up, okay, and the non-believer or the atheist who's trying to understand or is trying or listening from us, and then when we say, okay, the Lord Krishna was injured or he left his body, after this emotional lila, he left his body, it creates a bewildering problem for him because he does not have firm faith in Krishna. He does not have firm faith in the Shastra, so he cannot understand how this happens, and it sees this as a contradiction, and therefore he remains as an atheist. Okay, he cannot bring himself to this position of having faith in the Lord. Okay, Krishna is all merciful. So Srila Prabhupada he brings his point that Bhishma appreciated the all merciful attitude of the Lord, which is, although Krishna was disturbed by Bhishma Dev's sharp arrows, from pastime's point of view, Krishna enacted that he is disturbed from Bhishma Dev's sharp arrows, but still he did not leave Arjuna alone. Okay, so he was merciful to Arjuna by not leaving him alone, and nor was he reluctant to come before Bhishma's deathbed, even though he had been ill-treated by him on the battlefield. Bhishma's repentance and the Lord's merciful attitude are both unique in this picture. So Bhishma is repenting that he shot so many arrows at the Lord, but still Krishna was so merciful that he did not leave Arjuna, and he is so much more merciful that even though I shot arrows at him, still he has come when I am leaving this body. Okay, so both the aspects of Krishna's qualities have been brought up here. And apparent wound on Krishna's body are transcendently pleasing to him. Okay, this we have already seen a little bit. The Lord enjoyed the wounds created by his great devotee Bhishmadev, and because Bhishmadev is a devotee in the chivalrous relation, he fixes up his mind on Krishna in that wounded condition. Okay. So this, because Bhishma is a devotee in the Virya Rasa, so therefore when he sees Krishna with his hair scattered, dust covering his hair and body, okay, and wounds in his body, it is transcendently pleasing to Bhishma. Very, very difficult for a normal person to understand. If we see other religion, we have this Christianity and other religion, whichever religion we take, they have some idea or very vague idea of God, but they can never understand that a devotee or a follower or a believer in God can have such kind of relationship with his God. Okay, it's not conceivable for them. It's not possible for them at all. Okay, that's why this Bhagavad Dharma or this understanding of Krishna as a Supreme Personality of Godhead and his Akhila Rasamrita Murti, he is the reservoir of all pleasure, and how every devotee interacts with Krishna, who is the reservoir of all pleasure, and what kind of transcendental pastimes they perform and the pleasure they derive. It will always remain a mystery for those people, for other religions obviously, and for atheists definitely, because they can never understand these concepts at all. So only one who takes up devotional service, okay, and who follows this path of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, only for them it is possible to understand, or at least get some theoretical understanding at least of that this kind of relationship is also possible between God and his devotee. Other religions can never conceive of this at all, that devotee is shooting arrows at God. Who can do that? How is that possible? Right? It will be a big blasphemy in Islam. Right? First, they don't have form of the Lord that is there, but on top of that, we are shooting arrows at him. I don't know how is that possible? How is that possible? What kind of God is that? It just looks mythology, or just looks very inconceivable. Okay, totally bewildering. You cannot understand it all. But this is the glory of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement and of Srimad Bhagavatam, which speaks about all these things. Okay, which speaks about all these things and which illuminates all these different rasa which is there in Bhagavatam. That is why this is called a Rasa Shastra also. The third verse of the first chapter of first canto also. This all the rasa is there in Bhagavatam, because this is very important. These things is inconceivable to anybody outside. Okay. Yeah, so the science of rasa that is revealed in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement is inconceivable for a normal person. Atheists and other religionists cannot imagine a relationship with God where God is pleased because his devotee shoots arrows at him, and he takes it as the highest expression of love. Krishna takes it as the highest expression of love. Understanding of God, which is the most important activity of human form, is complete in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sampradaya. Everywhere else it is limited from small to major extent. Okay. Text 35. Sapati sakhi vacho nishamya madhye nichaparayor balayor atham niveshya sthitavati parasainikaya rukshna hritavati partha sakhera termamastu. In obedience to the command of his friend, Lord Shri Krishna entered the arena of the battlefield of Kurukshetra between the soldiers of Arjuna and Duryodhana, and while there he shortened the lifespans of the opposite party by his merciful glance. This was done simply by his looking at the enemy. Let my mind be fixed upon that Krishna. Okay, so this aspect of Krishna as the order carrier of his devotees is mentioned here. So in the previous, first two verses, we saw the beauty of the Lord, okay, and that he is the supreme person, because he because he is always satisfied. He is the leader of the devotees. Okay, he incarnates in this material world, and he created this material world. So supremacy of the Lord is mentioned. Okay, and in the next two verses, the beauty of the Lord is being focused upon. Okay, the 33rd verse and 34th verse also. Okay, and in the 35th verse, okay, it is mentioned, and the all merciful nature of the Lord also Srila Prabhupada discusses in the previous verse. And here, the same theme of the mercy of the Lord is continued by the quality of his being the order carrier of his devotees. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada says that the Lord, being the supreme living being, is never the order supplier or order carrier of anyone, whoever he may be. Okay. So even those people who go out and ask, Tirupati or go to other places and ask the Lord for something, okay, he is not the order supplier. What he sees is the devotion of that person. If the person is devoted to the Lord, okay, then he gives the devotee even material benefits. And in that process, he purifies him also. Okay, Acharyas explain that. But if someone comes just to do a business transaction with the Lord, he does not get anything. Okay, he does not get anything because the Lord is never the order supplier of anybody. But out of his causeless mercy and affection for his pure devotees, sometimes he carries out the order of the devotee like an awaiting servant. By executing the order of a devotee, the Lord becomes pleased, as a father is pleased to carry out the order of his small child. Okay. Now, see, we say that as a living entity, as part and parcel of Krishna, if we serve Krishna, then Krishna is pleased. And when Krishna is pleased, all his parts and parcels are also pleased. We also get pleased. So it's completely the other way around for Krishna. Krishna gets pleased when his devotees are pleased. Okay. When Krishna is pleased, the devotees get pleased. All living entities get pleased. But Krishna gets pleasure by serving his devotees. Okay. That's what Prabhupada writes here. By executing the order of a devotee, the Lord becomes pleased. Okay. And Srila Prabhupada also writes that there's a competition of who serves the most. Whether the Lord serves the devotee or the devotee serves the Lord. Okay. It's very relishing, it's amazing that this kind of relationship can be there. And it's the right of every living entity. Srila Prabhupada also says, it's the birthright of every living entity to purify himself and go back to Godhead. Cultivate this relationship, revive this relationship with Krishna. That is the birthright. Okay. All the other rights that people speak about, it is all on the bodily concept. It's all mundane. But the actual birthright of a human being is, because he has taken this human form of life, therefore he should cultivate his relationship with Krishna. That is his birthright. Okay. And once he does that, you see what is there in store. The Supreme Lord, the creator of this whole universe, multi-universes, so many universes are there. The Supreme Lord, he has thousands and millions of devotees serving him in the spiritual realm. He is the absolute truth and he takes personal interest in you. And he becomes happy when he serves you. Right? So it's amazing. These things are amazing. They're inconceivable for this whole. Nobody can understand these things. Krishna's activities are good for everyone. So Prabhupada writes, the Lord diminished the duration of life of the opposite party by his merciful glance. So even those who are not in a relationship with Krishna, okay, even for them, those people who died looking at the lotus face of Krishna, they also attained their Swarupa. Prabhupada writes. Oh, not in this purport, it will come. Okay. He says that the Lord is all good and whatever he does is for everyone's good. Apparently it was for the victory of Arjuna, his intimate friend, but factually it was for the good of Arjuna's enemies also. Such are the transcendental activities of the Lord, and whoever understands this also gets salvation after quitting this material body. Right? Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tatpata tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti so Arjuna. One who understands the transcendental activities of the Lord, they also get salvation after quitting their material body. The Lord does no wrong in any circumstance because he is absolute, all good at all times. So even for those who are his enemies, okay, when those enemies saw the lotus face of Krishna and left their body, they attained their Swarupa. They went back to Godhead. Okay, so they did not. Prabhupada, when he writes the purport, I think it will come. He does not even say that he went to Brahmajyoti. Okay, he said they attained the Swarupa. Saurupya. Not Saurupya, Swarupa. Swarupa, I think. Anyways, we'll come to that. Okay, we'll come to that. Okay. So attained their Swarupa in the spiritual world. Basically means they went to one of the Vaikuntha planets. Okay. Okay, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, he says, just by his glance, Akshana, showing to Arjuna, this is Bhishma, this is Drona, this is Karna. Right? When Arjuna asked Krishna to placed the chariot in between the two armies. Senyor ubhayor madhye ratam sthapyam ichchita. So just when Krishna says, see, that this is Bhishma, this is Drona, this is Kripa, Bhavan Bhishmashcha Karnashcha. He says, just by saying those words, he took away their lives. Vishnu Chavri Thakur says. And he says, this actually indicates he took away their prarabdha karma. Because prarabdha karma is what sustains one's life. So when he takes away their life, he has basically taken away the prarabdha karma. Since it later be said, Yam iha nirikshya hata gata swarupam. Those who saw him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained their original forms after death. Okay, this comes in 39th verse of this chapter. So, those who saw him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra and left their body, they attained their original forms after death. Okay. Vyavahita pritana mukham niriksha swajana vadhad vimukhasya dosha buddhya kumati maharadatma vidhyaya charanarati paramasya tasya mestu. When Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. So Bhishma Dev is recounting those pastimes that of Krishna as Parthasarathi. Okay, so this is his eternal worshipable Lord, Parthasarathi. So first he spoke about the beauty of the Lord as the chariot driver of Arjuna. And when he was fighting, then again his beauty of the Lord, his all merciful nature. And then how he became the order carrier of Arjuna by placing the chariot in front of them. And at the same time, he also gave mercy to his enemies. Okay, and now when Arjuna, after seeing all his enemies in front of him, then he gave him transcendental knowledge, okay, and removed his ignorance. So may that Lord's lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. Okay. Srila Prabhupada writes that executive heads go out and fight and should not be cowards. Okay. This is basically, Arjuna wanted to not fight. Okay, that was his ignorance. But Krishna, he eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge, after which he fought. So Srila Prabhupada makes his point that the prime ministers or ministers of defense today, they basically stay at home, as we discussed, and the other poor soldiers or mercenaries were sent out for fighting. The monarch were not cowards elected without consideration of royal qualification. All the executive head of both parties like Drona, Bhishma, Arjuna and Duryodhana were not sleeping. Okay. All of them were actual participants in the fighting. Okay. They were not sleeping. But if you see, the executive heads now, the fighting will be going on throughout. Because nowadays people do not follow this principle of fighting only during the daytime, and nighttime there is no fight. Actually, nighttime fighting happens more. Nowadays, whenever there is a war, more fight happens, or more bombarding, shelling, whatever they do, it happens at night. And they do that even on the places where citizens are there, or normal common people are living, civil people are living. Okay, and during night time, what? Executive heads would be taking rest. Okay, they'll be sleeping. But these parties, these executive heads of both the parties, in case of Kauravas as well as Pandavas, they were not sleeping, they were fighting. The innocent citizens were immune from all effects of fighting between the rival royal parties. The citizens had no business in seeing what was going to happen during such fighting. They were to pay 1/4 of their income to the ruler, whether he be Arjuna or Duryodhana. Doesn't make any difference. Okay, but we have heard from Srila Prabhupada that when this World War II was happening, then the Japanese bombs used to fall in Calcutta, right? In civilian areas, right? We are aware of that? No? Yes. So this is demoniac. Okay, but the citizens, they are not fighting. They are not on the battlefield. They are living their lives. So they should not be concerned about who is ruling them. They just have to give them taxes. That's it. Okay. But what happened was, it's the war that happens nowadays is not fought on dharmic principles. It is completely adharma from both sides. So therefore, whoever fights and whatever happens, nobody goes to the heavenly planets, because it's not for the sake of dharma. Okay, or you get killed in dharma and for the sake of dharma, and then you go back. Because the war itself is not fought on dharmic principles. So when dharma is not followed, nobody can be elevated to the higher planetary system. It's not possible. So this is the mess, no? Everything, no? Each and every sphere of activity in this material world, at this present moment, it's completely opposite to what the actual process should be. Even in the case of fighting. Okay, even when you're fighting, there also it's a mess. So, Srila Prabhupada continues. He says, Arjuna was not at all afraid of the giant military phalanx presented by Duryodhana, but because he was a merciful devotee of the Lord, renunciation of worldly things was natural for him, and thus he decided not to fight for worldly possessions. Arjuna's intelligence became apparently polluted because otherwise there would not have been a chance to deliver the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. This is another case, another situation where the Lord uses his devotees, or the Lord has his devotee play this pastime so that he can deliver or he can achieve a purpose. Atma Vidya. It is considered a myth or an occult practice to believe in the soul, but this is a manifestation of ignorance. Real knowledge means Atma Vidya. Everything else is phantasmagoria. If you go, or most of the people in this modern setup or in this present world, if you go and speak about the soul, they think it's a myth. They completely identify with the body and they think the body is everything. We are born, we live, we die, and everything is finished. There's nothing as soul. Okay, because it's a myth for them. But this is the sign of avidya. And actual real knowledge basically means Atma Vidya. Real knowledge means one who knows the soul. He is the one who is educated. One who does not know what is the soul is in ignorance. He is not educated. He does not have knowledge. So actually speaking, all the people all over the world who do not accept the science of soul are actually all foolish people, are all fools. Because they do not know what is the soul. Srila Prabhupada speaks about the great qualities of Arjuna, but Arjuna could not understand how to employ these qualities for Krishna, so he decided not to fight. Good qualities are for supporting devotional service and not a substitute for pure devotional service. Okay, so Prabhupada says here, right, that he was merciful devotee of the Lord. Okay, renunciation of worldly things was natural for them. Okay, and he was compassionate on other people. So these are all good qualities. But those good qualities, are supposed to be engaged in devotional service. This was the main problem, right? In Bhagavad Gita, this was the main problem. We understand that Arjuna has all the good qualities that is expected out of a devotee. But if those good qualities are not employed for devotional service, then those good qualities are of actually no use. Okay, they are not useful. They are basically useless. Okay, so all the good qualities must be engaged in Krishna service. It is not okay or it is not good if one is very soft spoken, one is merciful, one is compassionate, one never gets angry. There are these qualities we saw of a civilized person, 9 qualities. But if those qualities are not engaged or not conducive, or if they are not becoming conducive for devotional service, then those qualities have no meaning. So all the meaning in this world, or all the meaning is derived only in connection to Krishna. If something is connected to Krishna, it has some meaning. If it's not connected to Krishna, it has no meaning whatsoever. Okay. So good qualities of supporting devotional service, and they are not substitute for pure devotional service. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes that Arjuna's loss of intelligence was caused by the Lord himself, like Yudhishthira's present loss of intelligence. Because loss of intelligence is impossible for the eternal associate of the Lord, who is also the avatara, Nara. Okay. Basically, Nara refers to Arjuna here. So Yudhishthira also has a loss of intelligence. Okay. He is the son of Dharma himself, who is one of the Mahajanas. Okay. And therefore, one who knows Dharma, he actually cannot get bewildered. But just to glorify Bhishma Dev, just so that the instructions about Dharma can be spoken and can be recorded in the form of Mahabharata, therefore the Lord played this pastime, and Yudhishthira Maharaj was also put into ignorance. Because throughout this Vanaparva also, we will see that Draupadi will chastise Yudhishthira Maharaj, Bhima will chastise Yudhishthira. This is when Arjuna is not there. Arjuna has gone to the heavenly planets, okay, to acquire celestial weapons. And when these 4 Pandavas were there, along with Draupadi, and they are suffering. Draupadi is not able to bear the suffering. Bhima is not able to control his anger. So each and every time they go, they go to Yudhishthira Maharaj, and then they see, they basically, scold him like anything. This is not the duty of a Kshatriya. Okay, you are acting like an impotent. So many things they tell him. But Yudhishthira Maharaj is fixed. He said, no, dharma is what this is. This is how dharma should be followed. This is what we are supposed to do, and do things like this. And once Arjuna comes, then, because Yudhishthira Maharaj is the one who taught the mantra to Arjuna so that he can go to heavenly planets. Vyasadeva taught the mantra to Yudhishthira Maharaj, and at an opportune moment, Yudhishthira Maharaj taught it to Arjuna. So definitely, Yudhishthira Maharaj had the idea that he has to regain back the kingdom, and it might definitely involve fighting also. And that is the reason why Arjuna had to go and collect the celestial weapons. So definitely the understanding Yudhishthira Maharaj has that they have to go out and fight. So he knew they have to fight, and obviously he also knew that they has to kill so many people also. So he was fixed in dharma. From Yudhishthira's point of view, he was fixed during all that period. But after the fight transpired, and even when Arjuna was bewildered at the start of Mahabharata's war, Yudhishthira Maharaj was cool. He was not complaining. Okay, he knew that this is dharma. He has to go out and fight, and obviously he knew that result would be a massacre, a grand massacre. So many people would be killed, and when so many people are killed, so many women would be left without protection. Okay, and so many children would be there who would be without protection. Yudhishthira Maharaj was aware of all these things. So actually he should not be bewildered at this point of time. But when we see the bewilderment of Yudhishthira Maharaj at this point, where nobody is able to console him, then it shows that Krishna is basically playing the pastime where he's arranging Yudhishthira Maharaj to get bewildered so that Bhishma can speak to him all these details. So we discussed in last class. Arjuna was bewildered and Krishna gave the essence of all spiritual knowledge. Now Yudhishthira Maharaj is bewildered and Bhishma is elaborating on the spiritual knowledge, including all the Varna and Ashrama Dharma as well as the spiritual Bhagavad Dharma also. Okay, so we have to stop here because it's already time. So any questions about this, what we discussed today? Everything is clear. Bajrang is laughing. Clear, right? I think this is simpler. It's no problem. Okay. Fine. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.